We got Dieter Staudinger and Diane Hansen, and our old buddy Eric is playing hooky again. He was going to be here, but he got stuck. He took his lovely wife up to the San Juan Islands up off the northwest coast of Washington State and up near Seattle there, and was supposed to come home last night, and the airplane crapped out. That's a technical term for it no worky. And they got stuck there last night, and he just got on the airplane a little while ago. So anyway, he sends his love and his attention, and he'll be back next week there. So this is the place, to go for to overcome your fear flying for you or your loved ones or anybody that might have a fear of flying, and other people just hang out with us because we talk pilot and flying a lot. And so that's kind of cool. So we always call your attention to our Birds of a Feather group. And I'll do that the same this week. Please, if you're not a member, go over there and join. Go to that link there, flflink.bof for Birds of a Feather, and leave us a message there, leave a comment, introduce yourself, and feel free to take samples. That is to take information and leave some tips and techniques that help you or you found helpful overcoming your fear of flying. We thought we'd highlight the group. This is just a typical example of somebody commenting in our Birds of Feather group. This is from our good friend Janelle, who flew from Atlanta to San Diego today, and she had turbulence for 4 hours. Normally, and all of you out there who have issues with turbulence, that typically drives you crazy. And so she left us a message there, and she used the harmonizer, and Sylvia. That was Sylvia put the harmonizer comment down there. Read the note, Ron. But with the help of the harmonizer on repeat, I made it and listened to it. Yeah. So we tell you to live and die by that thing. For lack of anything better, if you got other tools that work, go for it. But this is what's made the harmonizer so popular in the last 15, 18 years now. And that is just to turn it on. People say, how should I use it? I say, turn it on when you get in the car to go to the airport, and don't turn it off until you get sick of hearing my voice and you want to strangle me through there, because then you're getting better. But anyway, so we're glad for Janelle, and thanks for leaving us a comment there. Speaking of notes, we have, I had one come in that said, has anyone been used temazepam or lorazepam? And those are trade names for drugs in the benzodiazepine family. And down there, you can see one of the comments, somebody said, hey, it feels good, not sleepy, just relaxes you. And I caution you all, remember the cost of the information, the medical information and advice you got for these medications, and it's worth what you paid for it. And I say that with tongue in cheek, because even myself, you want to be careful. You want to use these things the way they're supposed to be used. You want to observe the cautions on there. I know many people use them. Many people use them with alcohol, which is definitely a no-no. And I want you to be safe out there. We don't want to lose you. So as a matter of fact, when I saw this, I thought, we haven't talked about medications for a while, so we're going to put that on the agenda for next week. And I wanted to get a survey done. I may get that and put it and post it. But for right now, our question for the night, or our poll question, is we're just going to take a quick straw poll here and see who uses medication. So our poll question is, I take medications, A, all the time as an added precaution, B, only when the situation warrants, or C, I'm medication free. So if you would just pop an answer in there, if you feel like leaving a comment in there, and any other information that might be relevant to that. And again, next week, we're going to talk about medications more in detail on that. So tonight, our special feature will be, we're talking about media reports that trigger people. I found one right after our show last week, and I thought it would be a great topic to talk about. So we'll be doing that in just a minute. And then the Aviation News Roundup, we're just going to kind of do a recap of a couple of items out there that are current. So anyway, so we're glad to have you. Let's move forward. So here's this. I take it this is the Berlin airport. It's an airport that's been in use for a long time, it sounds like. But they added a new runway there. I think it's one taken off to the northeast there, and it's supposed to open. And I always like to look at all the other stuff in there. It says it's supposed to open. It's years late opening and billions of dollars over budget. So those are just things that go in the context of your mind. You're looking at this, and even though you might not be concerned about how much it costs or the fact it's late, it's a negative, and it triggers other negatives. And then these are some excerpts I took from the article. And the next one is, it talks about the new airport. Even before it opens, it says pilots are sharing safety concerns about takeoffs from the new airport, as reported by Der Tagesspiegel, which is I think it's a magazine over there in Germany. I'm gonna question this. I don't think pilots are that worried about safety, frankly, because we don't care what the parameters are. Every runway that we use it's part of your operating certificate for the airline for which you work. And in order for me to take off or land or use an airport as an alternate, it has to meet the criteria, and it's called TERPS. Terminal route procedures. It's a big acronym. And anyway, any airport, any runway that I use, I have to have pre-authorization that they have checked the performance for my airplane the way we operate it on that runway. So continually here, every in a slow news day, somebody will write about landing to the west at San Diego, because there's kind of a hill that goes down there, and there's a big old parking garage they built just under the flight path to the runway. So what they had to do, they had to displace the threshold down there, which is another topic there. But the media comes up with, says, oh man, it's dangerous because you got to fly over this parking garage and all that. That's horse pucky. You don't have to, it has nothing to do with that. What happens is we can't use that clear space at the first part of the runway. It shortens the effective runway length of the runway for us. So it's a landing computation problem. So it's not a big deal for us. And anyway, so we wanted to talk about this tonight. And the third item there was right out of the headline. Pilots warn takeoffs may be vomit inducing. Now, who could not just be bursting with enthusiasm to fly out of this airport? And this is just
certainly not the flight attendants.
Not the flight attendants at all. Yeah. Or anybody back there. So I wanted to talk just briefly about this, about not getting freaked out when you see comments like that. Our good friend Sue Wiley wrote, when I put this in our notes, in her group notes here today, she was saying, what's the deal on that? Well, here's the deal. And what she asked me, what the deal was. And I said, well, is the problem the airport or is it the anxiety? And from our point of view as a pilot, we don't care. Just like I said, that airport is analyzed. So regardless of what the procedure is, it's there for a reason. And I don't know why they want you to start a turn. And the issue here was they said that in order to when you're using runway 7 at Berlin's Brandenburg airport over there, you have to take off and then a right or a left turn when you get to the minimum turn altitude, which is 400 feet or 180 meters. And so the question, the answer to that is the problem, the airport, the anxiety. It's the anxiety. And so what happens is when you read articles like this, the story that you might begin to tell yourself after reading this is after you read the words vomit inducing in the title are, oh my gosh, this must be at least frightening if it's going to make me vomit or make me prone to that, or maybe it's unsafe. And it really is a misnomer in that. Yeah, it might not be like every other airport that you've ever been in that route of, but it doesn't matter because, as I said before, we have to analyze all the runways that we're operating. And for comparison, when you take out off out of Burbank, we have a similar turn that's required. And anybody who's taken our live class, either in Phoenix and we've flown over to Burbank, or when we float out of Burbank, you know that when you take off out of Burbank, the first thing you do when we take off to the southeast is you climb to the minimum altitude, 400 feet, and then you start a right-hand turn. And then we wait to be picked up by air traffic control. And usually we just have to keep turning right around. They were talking about, this one, you have to make a 140 degree turn or something like that. The one we do is almost 270 degrees. And so again, it doesn't matter. So, if you've never had I told Sue, if you've never taken off with us out of Burbank, you would certainly not have any issues with taking off out of Berlin's Brandenburg Gate there. So let's take a look at the Burbank Airport here. Okay, there it is in the center. It's the Bob Hope Airport, and you can see it's in that X pattern there. And if you look at the runway that extends up here, let me see if you can put the mouse up there, Dieter, right at the top, maybe. There's we're taking off toward the bottom of the screen, and I put some notes down there. So, whoops, my takeoff spiral got moved there. But normally we take off here and we'd get to 400 feet on the runway, and we'd turn all the way around, and we'd go off back up over to the northeast, back to Phoenix there. And you can see the Hollywood Hills are right off the end of the runway. And I always like to make a joke about this. There's a cemetery. I don't know who it is or what it is about airports, but oftentimes they put a cemetery right off the end of one or more of the runways there. So I like to point that out. Them. Yeah. So you can see, so the reason we normally take off on runway 15, which would be going down the airport from the top to the bottom, and then as soon as we get to 400 feet, we start a right turn. And that's because there's Los Angeles International is just about 8 miles over the Hollywood Hills over there. And the Hollywood Hills are where you see the Hollywood sign, if you're looking to the north there. And so they want to keep us out of all of the traffic moving in and out of the LAX airport. Now, if we had an issue, like mainly if I were to lose an engine right on takeoff before I started that turn, I could continue and go straight ahead if I wanted to. And what I would do is I would declare an emergency. I'm talking to the air traffic controller, and what he would do is he would coordinate with the approach controllers at the LAX airport, and they just make sure that there's no conflicts, and we could go blasting right over the LA airport if we wanted to. But the main point here is that we do the same maneuver here that they're talking about, and even more so than they're talking about in the Berlin airport. It is not vomit inducing. I've never thrown up on takeoff over there, at least not due to that. No, I've never thrown up on takeoff. So it's crazy. So you got to be really careful when you watch the headlines or when you read through stories and that. You want to get the true skinny, and you're going to get that from us here at Fearless Flight, or from some credible aviation source that can tell you that has nothing to do with the way we operate the airplanes and the safety involved there. Okay. And I'll show you one other airport. Now, this airport is legendary in the States down here. It still gets a lot of press. You can talk to people and say, have you ever done that departure out of Orange County, John Wayne Airport? And people will say, yeah, that's like a roller coaster ride at Disneyland. Well, it used to be even more dramatic. Again, if you look at the flight path there, we take off from the runway, and then we make an immediate about 15-degree left turn, because if you look down here right below where that little blue river is down there, that's an inlet. And so there's no houses, nobody living there, but everywhere else around there is Newport Beach with some very expensive residents down there, and they don't like airplanes disrupting the sanctity of their airspace over there. So it's got noise monitors. There's actually 7 noise monitors between the runway and the shoreline there. And so what we do, if you've ever done this or done anything like it, we take off and we climb. We take off with maximum thrust, and it's a rather instead of 15 degrees pitch up, we go to 25 degrees. So it does truly look like you're going to the moon up there. And we climb to 1,000 feet above the ground, the ground level. AGL means above ground level. We reduce the thrust, not just like a normal climb, but way back to a minimum level of thrust. And we lower the nose at the same time. So sometimes you get that lightness in your tummy as we push over a little bit. And then we continue the takeoff until we get 6 miles past the shoreline. And then we resume a normal climb there. And all that is solely for noise abatement. Again, the same rules apply. If I were to have an emergency, like losing the thrust on one engine, we're going to immediately abort the noise abatement departure. We're going to take off. We're going to do whatever we have to do, climbing, power levels, you name it, pitch and ground track, to fly the airplane safely like we practice in the simulator all the time. But again, so there's 2 particular airports. We started out talking about Berlin with a vomit-inducing turn at low altitude if you're taking off on runway 7 up there. And I compared to you airports that airplanes operate in and out of every day and have for the last 50 years over there at Burbank and Orange County, which have similar maneuvers, but they're all part of the local departure procedures there. And in this case, noise abatement.
We fly into, and this hasn't anything to do with noise abatement, but we fly into some airports in the Rocky Mountains, and in Vail and in Aspen and some of the other places. I mean, the airports that we fly into, that I've flown into, are surrounded by mountains, and so we can't have that nice general easy in and out. You know, we kind of come in boom, and then we kind of go out boom, like as there's
a rule in aviation. Tie goes to the dirt.
Yes.
So we like to avoid that. Yeah.
When we're coming there are mountains all around us, we can't just take that nice easy glide path. So
we call those cumulus granitimus. I can't read it, but
the first time I did that, the captain said to me, "Have you ever flown in here?" I said, "No." He said, "Okay, well, just be prepared." And I loved it. I thought it was great fun.
Yeah.
And I've flown in there in those airports several times since then. And it's very interesting to see the passengers that have never flown into the Rockies. You know, it's not just that nice, easy, well, let's just sail right in there. So you say it depends on the airport and what's around.
Yeah. And as Diane said, if it has any unique characteristics about that, the approach procedures, the instrument approaches into a place like Bozeman, if you look at that, it takes you out here, it goes your road on an arc, comes in here, you intercept another course. That's because there's mountains in the way. Right. And so these are all flight tested in under all conditions, but primarily the FAA tests these airports at least once a year to make sure that all the instrument approach procedures are still valid for that. And so we very, very definitely want to do that. And we have special departures, because if I lose the thrust on one engine on departure from a place like Bozeman or Grand Junction or any of those places that have high terrain around there, I have to know before I depart. That's part of my departure briefing. I have to go over with the person who's flying the airplane with me, my monitoring pilot. We have to go over exactly what's going to happen under normal conditions, and then if we had a problem where we had to fly this particular ground track. Right. And that's how we do it safely. That's why we don't pile airplanes.
We have our pilots that are flying into those locations in the Rockies are specially trained. So they have to have additional hours in landings and takeoffs in those specific locations, because as you said, those approaches and departures are unique.
Those are designated.
Which is similar to the ETOPS certification, which we usually talk in connection to fear of flying over water. I just want to jump in here, Ron, because we asked a question and we never came back to the answers.
Yeah, let me just say one thing. When Diane talked about the qualifications, they're called special purpose airports.
Right.
And so before, you have to be specifically qualified to go ahead. Go ahead, dear.
Yeah. So I just wanted to Mary Mahaney. So proud to say no medication, which is
Yay,
awesome.
Mary. And you deserve that, Mary. Man, all the work that you did, it's been, gosh, it seems like, maybe 3 or 4 years, but it's probably more than that now. So
yeah. So, and then Elaine, also Nomads, and then Sue Hopkins, when needed.
Okay.
So, and do we have another
So
one?
what? So it's like doing my colonoscopy. They've got it down where you can't even count on the fun time with the drugs anymore. They've got it down so it's so minimal. So and no, we want you to do it without
Let's not go there.
Yeah, that's our whole purpose here. All right. Okay, and then the last thing about those airports, like Sue was reminding me, wouldn't it be nice if the pilot said something? We actually used to. It was mandated in our procedures for Orange County for years that I flew in and out of there, and we would make a special announcement just before we took the runway to let people know that this is going to be a more dramatic takeoff than what they might anticipate there, but it was totally safe. And then when we changed, they changed the procedure so that we didn't cut the power back as much because the airplanes were becoming bigger with more engines and stuff. We didn't need to do that. We were climbing much more rapidly with lower thrust. And then they took that procedure out of the manuals. But I know I did, and the people I flew with, we continued to make that announcement. And so again, if you're a fearful flyer, what are you going to do? You're going to ask to board early. You're going to go down there. You're going to tell the first flight attendant that greets you that you're a little nervous and you'd like to meet the pilots. And then when you get to the pilots, now in advance if it's Orange County, okay, or Berlin over there, or Burbank, that there's kind of a special maneuver there. So you could ask about that. But in general, you can just say anything you can tell me about today's flight, I would be interested. And I guarantee you the pilots that fly out of Orange County will probably say something to you about that. Okay. So forewarned is forearmed, and it's much better than sitting there like you're just a victim in the seat there. So, okay. Aviation news roundup. Fortunately, not anything major in the way of accidents or incidents this week, but we did want to talk about an update on the fire situation out here in the West. Dieter was talking beforehand. I think you guys are seeing evidence of the smoke as far east
up here
as Toronto.
in Toronto. Yeah, up here.
Yeah.
The last couple of days, there was an interesting haze that's kind of descended, and that's the jet stream, pushing over all that the particles. And what can I say? Nothing is an island. It's all connected, and
and the reason that you're getting that is because the jet stream is primarily west to east. And any of you budding paleontologists out there, you may know that it's not been all that many years since they realized that there was a huge, colossal volcanic eruption up in the Yellowstone area, which is still very active in terms of the plate tectonics. And there is some concern that sometime in the future that thing is going to go off again, and it's going to bury everything from Iowa all the way to New York City with soot and silt, just like St. Helens there. So it's not surprising that it is affecting that. I haven't noticed it particularly in Arizona here. I don't know if you have, Diane, but it's definitely, you took a picture here. That next picture there is one that.
Let me put that up. Just give me a second here.
The worst areas, of course, are all up and down the West Coast there.
Right.
And let's see, Diane took this picture come up. Where did you take that, Diane?
This was in Fresno. I had a trip this past weekend, and I did what's called a turn. So from Phoenix to Fresno, back to Phoenix. And then I was supposed to go up to Redmond, Oregon, and spend the night in Redmond. And we got to Fresno. Actually, I was forward, and we were coming into Fresno. And on the initial descent, you could smell the smoke in the cabin of the aircraft. And which, the good news and the bad news, the bad news, obviously, I could smell the smoke. We could all smell the smoke that was out there. The good news is it proves that we do have outside air that comes in, fresh air, fresh being in quotes at this point. But this was on the ground. We had, I don't know, about an hour or so in Fresno. And it was this was probably 2:00 in the afternoon, maybe. And it was very, very hazy. And
I mean, it looks surreal.
It like, really was. It looked
a dust storm on Mars or something like that.
Yeah, so. It looked otherworldly. Anyway, so we left there and got back to Phoenix, and our flight to my working flight up to Redmond was canceled because of the fire. There had been lots of flights up to Redmond and Eugene and Medford and all those areas that had either been delayed.
We still have the HEPA filters working for us, so it takes a lot of the particulates out of the air. What it doesn't do, years ago, before they built the new Denver airport, we used to fly out of Denver Stapleton, and if you take it off to the north up there, about 20 miles after takeoff, you're climbing through about 10,000 feet, so you're pretty good chunk into the air there. And we flew over the Greeley stockyards. And guess what you used to smell over the stockyards?
Oh, dear.
People would laugh. I mean, like they say, what is that? But it just tells you how intense the methane was coming off of those stockyards down there. And you could bet. And so that's why we loved windy days to blow it out from underneath us there. Yeah. So you can tell when you're smoking the air and things like that.
You really can tell. And that picture is a very mild one in comparison to some of the photos on the website for my airline and other airlines in San Francisco and a lot of the cities on the West Coast where the flights have been canceled or delayed because it's just horrendous. Well, Ron knows better than I do as far as you're all being able to fly into that stuff. But it was bad.
If you go back to the Mount St. Helens eruption back in 85, I think 86, something like that. That's when we had my airline at the time. I was working for the original Frontier Airlines, and that's very, very, very caustic. It's like pumice in the air, literally. And it caused us to have engine problems on that. And so that's why one of the briefings, if you're flying international, is if you're down particularly in the South Pacific, there's active volcanoes all over the world. And so they monitor those with satellites and other devices so that we can avoid that kind of threat to the airplane there. So, okay. The last thing we want to talk about with the update was just the COVID-19. There's not much going on. People still getting bumped off the airplane a little bit. And Diane had a not jujube, gummy bear.
The gummy bear. There was a story on the internet of a mom and her child who were removed from a flight. And the little one just to kind of get around it was wearing a mask, but eating gummy bears, like kind of one at a time sort of thing. And, and we appreciate that. The announcements that we make now have evolved and have changed as the understanding of the disease has expanded. And so we say that you can remove your mask for brief times when you're eating or drinking, but that you certainly need to put your mask back on. And the concern with this individual, this youngster, is that it was maybe, don't know for sure, but maybe a way to circumvent that, and I've seen people have a bag of peanut M&Ms or something, and they're just eating them one at a time so that they can say, well, I'm still eating. Well, that's really, the spirit and the letter of the law. We're kind of trying to get around those individuals. And so if a flight attendant comes up to you and says, please would you put your mask back on and put it on over your nose and mouth, we really are trying to protect you and our other passengers, because the other passengers will come to us and say, so-and-so, this other passenger is not wearing a mask. And we're trying to make sure that we really do want to make sure everybody gets to where they're going in a timely and safe fashion and with the least amount of stress for all of our passengers. And so if you can just understand that those kinds of announcements and those requirements are for everyone's safety, then everybody's going to have a better flight. So, and
Yeah,
no one
we don't want to
has
be the
removed.
we don't want to be the gummy bear police.
No, we don't want to be the gummy. And
If-
and I know we've talked about this before. The flight
Right.
attendants, we really don't want to be the mask police, because it just.
But if we haven't eaten, the anything that's confiscated does go right to the captain. So we just want to warn you about that. Now we want you
they
to
do ask. Yes, they do.
Yeah. We're trying to keep everybody safe.
We really are. We really are.
So, anyway.
But understand,
Okay.
I
Go ahead.
talked, this is about 2 weeks ago, I talked with one of the gate agents, and a few weeks ago, they had 2 aircraft which were in the air, and that got turned back to Phoenix because of issues, mass issues.
Yeah.
So understand that they're not kidding. No one is kidding this.
Right.
They really aren't.
And it's usually inconvenient for everybody. So.
Oh, terribly.
So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Really.
Okay. Any other questions or anything, Dieter, before we put that last slide up there?
No, go ahead, Ron.
Okay. So I thought this was just a cute slide. I found a little thing on the internet that said funniest airport signs, and there were a whole array of them there. But I thought that this one had to be either someone trying to support a fearful flyer or someone who was a fearful flyer, and they were happy when they were part of me there. So, oh, great.
Love that.
Somehow survived. So yeah, and there's a lot more of that where that came from if you fly, because flying is the safest way to travel on the planet.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
once again, we're glad that you joined us here tonight. I want to thank Diane and Dieter, and we'll put out our best wishes for Eric and Deb, who are flying back from the Seattle area. And we will see you again next week for Fearless Flight Live right here at the same time, 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. And have a great week, everybody, and stay safe.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Night.